When you first load up the app, you'll see this map in front of you. It won't be color coded yet. You can add color to it by adding a property and clicking compute. These are counties that are color coded independently. You can change this to zip codes. So as you can see now, it's color coded by zip code. And you can zoom in into a particular state. So we can zoom into Massachusetts to see what the home prices, which is what we picked earlier, look like. So as we expect, downtown is more expensive. As you go farther out, Western Mass is pretty cheap. And for each one, we can hover over to see the average list price for current year for 2023. And this year we can actually change as well here or here. And if we click on this, there's a bunch of other cool things we can do. We can go back in time, forward in time. We can zoom into the city itself as well. This again is by tract. We can go by zip codes as well as we did earlier. The largest granularity is counties. So this is all one county, this is all one county. So let's say we go by zip codes and we want to see what the A class areas, B class areas, C class areas are. So the factors that affect neighborhood class are going to be crime rate, which is going to be under government, so crime index. Next statistic is going to be income. So the more people get paid, the higher class neighborhood is. It's also going to be correlated to our median home price. Unemployment. Negative here means we want less of this. And if we want something to be even more important, we change the weights. And this gives us a pretty well correlated understanding of A class, B class, C class, D class neighborhoods. Dark green is our A class. So we have Newton, Brookline here, no surprise. Light green, Waltham, Watertown, that's our B class neighborhoods. Everything else, I would call it a C-class neighborhood. You can also create your own markers. Like here's an example marker I created earlier. You can take notes under it. You can have calendar events, add attachments to it. You can use this to track your own real estate that you already have using markers. You can use this to research new areas that you're not familiar with. This time I want to show different types of heat maps and the kind of filtering you can do. You've already seen the basic heat map. Red is bad, green is good. We can invert these as I showed you in the last one. All of a sudden, this will get negated. And this is useful when we want to stack stats. In addition to that, we have these categorical metrics. They're shown by this pie chart. There are two types of categorical metrics. The system automatically changes between them based on the number of selected categories. When you have two categories, we see a shaded heat map, like the political map shown here. With three or more categories, we see our color-coded map with each region's color matching the dominant category. So we have our oil heat in the northeast. We have electric heat in the south. It's too expensive to heat your house electrically in the north. That's why you see almost no electric heat here, except in Washington and Oregon states where the weather doesn't really get that cold in the winter. Gas heat became a lot more popular later. You also see that gas heat is more popular in cities like in Boston here. And as the air gets more rural, you get oil heat. Now, another cool thing is filters. So if we go into filters, let's say we see that solar heat is here, but it's so tiny compared to other sources of heat, they're not showing up on the map. So let's disable gas heat, gas tank heat, electric heat, and oil heat. And then solar may show up. So now notice solar is light green, and we see it show up in parts of California, in Arizona, places where there's a lot of sun, as you would expect. Now, wood heat is still getting in the way. So let's go back here and disable wood heat as well and reapply. Now we see other regions that are using solar a little bit, maybe not to such a degree. We also see coal appear that was hidden before. Filters also work on regular stats. So for example, let's say we pick housing. We get our housing score, but also let's say we don't want to look at any areas where home prices are above 250. Now we start seeing a lot more areas disappear, and we have most of our city regions disappear now. We can click on any state to zoom in, and this metric will get automatically recomputed to each category. So as we keep scrolling between states here, these are already computed. If we click on a city that's between two states, the other portion is also filled in so that we see the entire MSA here, the entire city, as I mentioned earlier. We can also change our granularity here. We can go as detailed as a tract. Now notice something interesting happened here on the tract. We started seeing a lot more red than green, and I talk about this concept in my blog post. This is actually a great way to identify rural areas versus suburban versus inner city. These zip codes that we start out with are arbitrary and they don't change. However, a tract is defined as a region that contains between 2,000 to 8,000 people, preferably around 4,000, which means that every 10 years, if the tract exceeds 8,000 people, census splits it again into multiple tracts. And the inner city tracts tend to be split a lot more frequently than the rural ones. If we look at it in terms of percentiles, which is what this logic is doing, we see a lot more smaller tracts in the inner city take the top spots, and then the rural ones move down from something that would have been, say, 40th percentile to 20th percentile. It may be useful for land investing if you want to understand what counts as a rural area, what counts as an urban area. For our last scenario, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to start with Boston just because I'm more familiar with it. For metrics, I'm going to change to businesses, and I'm going to see all businesses by size for each industry. So let's say I'm interested in exploring the shape of the city to understand what each neighborhood looks like. Say I'm not familiar with Boston. So in this case, I see entertainment going on in this area, and there's some IT work going on here. Then a bunch of professional services. Professional services include things like legal, accounting, architectural design, computer, management, scientific, and advertising. So let's say we want to drill farther down one of these categories. I first want to confirm this trend. We see there's a lot of professional services in these dark green areas. These tend to be the wealthier suburbs. So let's see a farther breakdown of what these professional services actually are. There's a lot of legal work happening here. That's not too interesting. Accounting happening here. What's interesting to me here is scientific and computer. There's a ton of scientific activity going here in Cambridge, which is indeed true. That's where MIT is located. MIT, and then Harvard is right here. So I'm not surprised there's a lot of high-tech science activity here. We can even drill down further. Let's say that these accounting and legal services are distracting us. We can remove them as I showed you before. So this tells us these areas tend to be the high-tech ones. Similarly, we can go to the entertainment industry to see what the entertainment looks like. Again, we see more of a downtown, so let's see what the downtown entertainment looks like. We break down the entertainment again, and we see a lot of items filing in other category. From here, we can do one of two things. We can either disable other because it's getting in the way. So we can tell immediately just by looking at the legend here that this is the hipster area with a lot of independent artists. Or let's say we actually want to explore that entertainment other category in more detail, which has 4 subcategories. We can see that most of it is actually fitness centers. We can apply the same approach to figuring out where to build a certain business. For example, let's drill down into industries again and look at trucking. And we see this falls into 5 categories. The interesting one here that stands out is this moving, because moving is used furniture, which means that these areas that come up green here might be good places to build a self-storage facility if one doesn't already exist there or if they're undersaturated. The last tidbit I want to talk about is trends. After all, you want to invest based on the population growth, not based on the current population. This introduces us to the concept of deltas. You can change any metric into a delta metric through the filter menu. In this case, we're going to change it to 3 years. And we immediately see the areas that got highlighted green change. Here in Boston, we see that the spot with the highest growth is the Seaport District. No surprise there, as this place has been seeing rapid growth since developers started building skyscrapers here. What I was surprised about is Revere. However, when I checked the trends, this is indeed correct and something I was not aware of, even as a local. Revere saw a spike of population growth after COVID. To recap, we've seen how to identify neighborhood desirability, we've seen how to use categories to identify regional trends, we've seen how to identify the city layout and discover interesting neighborhoods, and we've also seen how to track trends over time. Hopefully the features I showed today are useful to you.